Okay, so now we're going to look at this stuff using tables. And you may find this a little bit easier, as a matter of fact. Um, First thing, though, is if you're to make a table, we're integrating x squared from 0 to 2. So 0 to 2 are the x values. And depending on how many rectangles or subintervals they want you to use, that's what you're going to have to base your x values on. So if they said one interval, then your first value of x would be 0, the last would be 2. If they said two intervals, then you go from 0 to 1 and then 1 to 2. A lot of ours are going to go for 4 intervals. So from 0 to 2, since the whole length is 2, divide by 4, that would be 0.5. That means each end or each interval would be 0.5 long. So your x values would be 0 to 0.5 to 1 to 1.5, and then finally to 2. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a table of x values, just like you can see down here. And then since my graph is x squared, that's going to give me the heights. I'm going to figure out what the value of the function is at each one of these x values. You just square them because that's what it says. X squared will give you the heights or the values. So my f of x, remember f of x is x squared, is going to be 0 squared, 0.5 squared, 1 squared, 1.5 squared, and 2 squared. So those are the heights of all my rectangles. So now what it asks me to do, write Riemann sums. You're going to take the area of all these rectangles. Now don't ignore this for now. Let's just focus on the table. The base of each rectangle is the length, is the x-axis length. So the first rectangle will be this long, 0.5. The height, because it's a right Riemann sum, just look at the right value, 0.25. So the first rectangle is 0.5 times 0.25. The second rectangle, now we're starting at 0.5 and we're ending at 1. So we'd be at, see there's a little overlap. It looks like a little overlap, but it's not. It's just because we're using a table. 0.5 to 0.1 is the second rectangle, and that's length is still 0.5, and its height, based off the right, is 1. The third rectangle would start at 1 and then at 1.5. So that's still 0.5. And its height on the right is 2.25. And then finally, the last rectangle starts at 1.5, ends at 2. Its length is still 0.5. But its height, based off the right, is 4. So when you do the math, that's all this is. It's just fractions. It's 3.75. Now, if you get really good at this or you really understand it, you don't even have to do all that. You can just do this. But you really have to understand what you're doing to do this. But if you're using right endpoints, you just go, all right, 0.5 times 0.25, 0.5 times 1, 0.5 times 2.25, 0.5 times 4. Plug it in your calculator and get the answer. So don't stop the video here. Watch the left. Or you can just try the left, pause it, try the left, and see if you're right. So for the left, you're going to use the same exact table. Nothing changes. We're still using 4 subintervals. and do the exact same thing that we just did. The only difference is this. The first subinterval is 0 to 0.5, which is a length of 0.5. But now don't use the right value, use the left value, 0. Easy. Second rectangle, 0.5 to 1, so that's its width. The left value is 0.25, and so on. Third rectangle, still 0.5 is the width, height is 1. And last rectangle, from here to here, still 0.5 is the width, and its height is 0.25. Or, sorry, 2.25. And the answer is that. These are the same things as these, except they're in decimal. Finally, the midpoints. Now, the midpoints, I said use two subintervals. So, our subintervals are, since we're going from 0 to 2, that's the limits of our integrals, we have to go from 0 to 1. That's the first interval. And the second interval is from 1 to 2. So now the widths of both those are 1. I'm going to do the first one in green, 1. And the width of the second one is also 1. But the height of the first interval should be based off the midpoint, which is there. 0.25 is the middle value. And then the second one, the width is still 1. The height should be based off the middle of the interval. Value is 2.25. You can see the answer is 0.25 plus 2.25, which is 2.5. So that's pretty simple if, and this is important, if you get it. So hopefully you do. If you need to look at it again, the video, look at it again. If you need to ask questions, ask questions. We'll do some example problems next.